Over the last couple of months, Darren and I have been talking to farmers all over the country and really all over the world about how can I cut my input expenses. And you know what? Fertilizer is my biggest expense, so maybe I should just cut micronutrients. I don't know if they're really helping me that much anyway.
Well, the first thing that I do as soon as I hear that is just say, oh, no, don't go down that path. When you think about micronutrients and all the micronutrients you're going to need for your crop, it doesn't add up to that many pounds. And you look at what you need for N, P, and K, for example, it may be hundreds of pounds. With micronutrients, it may be just a few pounds for your entire crop. And when you look at how important these micros are in different functions within the plant, it really raises some concern about ever cutting the micronutrients out of our budget. Now, you may say, well, wait a minute now. My dad didn't used to use micros, or grandpa didn't used to use micros. That may be true, but farming was a little bit different 20, 30, 50 years ago. Like for our farm, for example, we used to have a small amount of livestock and a small amount of farm ground. And so we would be putting micronutrients into our livestock's diet and then spreading the manure out in our fields. So we were getting micronutrients out in our fields, and we look at the nutrient analysis of the manure that we were putting on. We had good levels of micronutrients. We were feeding our crops at least what the crop needed, if not even a little bit more. Nowadays, our farming operation has grown big, the livestock are gone, and we've got to actually put the micros out intentionally on our farm. And this is the case for many farms across the country. Now, even if you are putting manure on your ground, you need to have that manure analyzed to make sure you're getting the right micronutrients out for your crop and in the right ratios. You may have a strong level of one micro or another in your manure. That's fine, but you may have to supplement it with other micronutrient applications.
Here's the other thing to keep in mind. When we're talking about, hey, we only need a few pounds per acre, or with certain micronutrients, it might be a tenth of a pound or a quarter of a pound. How are you going to spread that evenly across that entire acre? So rather than trying to do this with a dry product, it's generally speaking more effective, more efficient doing it with a liquid product, especially when we're in corn and soybeans. When we're talking 30-inch rows on our farm, we'll just put that right in the furrow with the planter so we have the best chance for uptake. Now, you might think right away, ooh, fertilizer in furrow, how safe is that? Well, yes, you want to pick the right product, use a safe product, that type of thing. That's number one. Number two, you can always blend that down with water. That's something we do on our farm. And then I guess the other question that goes along with this is how available are those nutrients? What we talk about quite often is chelated micronutrients. It's just like for livestock. Darren brought up livestock and manure a little earlier. I just remember talking with my dad about chelated micronutrients when I was a kid, and it's the same exact thing for crops. We want more available products. So yes, the chelated products cost a little bit more, but they're usually a little bit more available right away. And that's what we're looking for. We want to make sure that the crop has good levels of micronutrients all through the growing season, especially when it gets started.
I want to take a step back now, Brian. You were talking about putting on micros, and we need such low amounts. It's hard to do that with a dry product, but I know there's a lot of fertilizer applied across our country in a broadcast manner. What I would suggest is rather than say, I want to put a half a pound of boron out and try to get that to spread evenly over my field and mix it in with hundreds of pounds of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. What I'd rather see done is use a blended micronutrient product where you're going to be using 20 or 30 pounds. You've got a lot better shot at getting an accurate spread. I know many guys using a dry blended micronutrient product broadcast. Just spread the micros. You can get your NP and K blended and that's fine, but make a second run across the field. It doesn't take much time if you're only putting 20 or 30 pounds out. That may be the best way to get the micros spread evenly and then not to have issues with it settling out in a big batch of NP and K.
So our advice is to buy a blended micronutrient product that's right for your crop.
Okay, now if you're seeding wheat, for example, and it's drilled out in your field, or you're drilling soybeans, that broadcast application of micronutrients may be okay. But if you're into a row crop like corn, for example, and you've only got to plant once every 30 inches, there's a lot of efficiency to be gained by banding that micronutrient application. Whether that be a deep band with strip till in the fall, that's definitely possible, or more commonly banded right in the furrow or in a 2x2 at planting time. That may be the best way to go. Probably my favorite application would be a 2x2. That way you don't take any issue or risk by putting it in furrow, but there are some safe products for in furrow use as well.
But as a general statement, we would tell you if you're going to broadcast instead of banding, you're probably going to need 50% more to 100% more. It's just that's the way the thing works. You have so much tie up in the soil, it's not right where your root is going to be, so you don't get uptake this year, so you got to keep that in mind. mind. One other thing I was going to bring up real quick is the difference between some of these micronutrients. Some of them are mobile in the soil and some are not. Zinc, for example, doesn't move very well with water in the soil, so it basically stays where you put it until a crop or a weed uses it up. In other words, if I'm going to lay all my zinc on top of the surface of the soil and then I have some erosion, where is my zinc? Well, it's no longer where I put it, right? So that's why I usually tell guys, hey, I'd like to see you ban these nutrients, but I would like to see them banded a little bit deeper in the soil, at least down where you're planting your seed at a couple inches, but maybe even 8 to 10 inches deep. Now, boron, on the other hand, that's something totally different. That one does leach just like sulfate and nitrate. The boron can leach down through the soil with moisture. So what we would advise with boron is maybe you want to broadcast that. We don't have a real big issue with that because a lot of boron isn't needed in the plant till a little later in the season, like at flowering or at pollination when we talk about corn, for example. I guess the whole point here is just understand what you're doing with these micronutrients, and we would much rather see them placed, if you're going to do a blended product, because of zinc and some others that aren't very mobile, placed into the soil rather than laid on top and just left there. These micronutrients are incredibly important. We just want to make sure that you're not leaving them out, and test your soil so you know what you actually could cut back on fertilizer. Maybe you can cut back on some things, probably not, but maybe you can. I guess we just want to make sure you don't leave out that last $5 that might make you several more bushels per acre. Whatever you do, try not to cut things that are making you money.
Well, one thing you definitely don't want to cut is weed control. We'll show you how to control this tough weed later in the show.